Hi, Margaret. Thank you so much for being here and saying yes to being a guest on the show. How are you feeling today?
Amazing, of course. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm really happy we connected on TikTok of all places. Um, TikTok is magical. I mean, I have a lot of actually adjectives for TikTok, but I'm really grateful you stumbled in my algorithm and you agreed to come on. I just love your content. When we talked on the phone, I just think you have this really vibrant, down to earth personality. So I'm like really excited to get going with this episode.
That's Thank you, first of all. I love to hear that because you never know how you come across to other individuals. I'm kind of just out there having fun and actually kind of new to TikTok. I've been in the IG world for a long time, trying to make my way through there, but it's been fun to meet individuals such as yourself as well and connect. So I'm super grateful for that as well and for you having me on your podcast.
Yay, right on. Well, before we start our discussion, please tell the listeners a little bit about yourself.
Aside from being a manifestation teacher and mentor and being obsessed with that world, I am a mama to two kiddos. I have a 22-year-old and an 11-year-old. So my mom identity is a very, very strong one. But I'm also an artist and an athlete, and health and fitness are a huge part of actually my manifestation world and how I vibrationally align to be flowing and in the vibe. So that's a little bit about who I am on a personal side.
Amazing. I love that. So, why we are here today? We are gathered here. I don't mean to make it so serious, but really, the purpose why I created this season in Pages Lessons, all things manifestation, is I want to highlight just different categories of manifestation. It is such a hot topic word. There's a lot of confusion out there. It's a loaded word. And so my role as a holistic life coach, and I help my clients build their dream life that aligns with their values. So in my sessions, when I talk about manifestation, some clients know what I'm talking about. They're vibing, they understand, and other clients, they want to learn more about it. And so my goal for this season is to address as many different topics and advice and get some real life examples of things that have manifested for people into reality so that the audience can walk away with more clarity on how to manifest their dream life. I personally have manifested a lot of things. I have a lot of positive examples of people, places, beliefs that have come into fruition in my life. But instead of just talking about me, I think it would be way more valuable to add more unique voices and perspectives to the podcast. So I'm dedicating the season to interviewing others and experts to share their stories and to empower and build the life we want. So, that being said, Margaret, the number one question that I ask every guest in this season is, how do you define manifestation?
In a nutshell, intentional creation. Like to me, it's really the process of bringing your vision from the quantum field into your physical 3D reality and looking at it as the process of making the unseen seen.
I think the keyword that stuck out is intention.
Yes.
And I feel like we can have the best intentions for things,
Mm-hmm.
and then our thoughts and belief systems kick in where we then immediately discredit that, and we're like, oh, well, that's not gonna happen, right? Like, I can have the intent that I'm going to be very successful and have blah blah blah. Why haven't I manifested this yet? Right. So intention's a great start, I think. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe tell me a little bit more when you mean intention. I'm just being very nitpicky right now.
So, intentional creation is creating with purpose, right? And what I mean by that, when I'm intentionally creating, I have a system in place, I have a go to. So, when I am manifesting something, a desire, I will define that desired outcome clearly. And this also depends on what type of individual you are, because some people are very visual, very detail oriented. So for them, it's really about that visual, that detail, as much, right? But there's some individuals that don't operate in that same way. So for them, that could actually create more resistance. So for them, it's just more of a generalized story, maybe, right? So you have to know which of the two you are. But the point being is that having a formula and being very clear with it, and then taking the action, identifying the identity that is associated with that outcome all together as a package, and being intentional with that creation. So that's what I mean by that. When you are intentionally creating, you are intentionally following a formula or following some kind of system that will bring you to your desired outcome.
Okay. So it sounds like for manifestation, you're including steps, a system, you're including like a manual, so to speak.
So to speak, yeah. I mean, if, like I said, high level manifestation to me is creation. It's intentional creation. But then when you start to peel back the onion, then you start to get the layers.
Amazing. Well, is there anything like around manifestation that we can kind of cut, debunk, and just clarify right now for the audience? Because even just saying the word manifestation, people are going to attach some old stories. So is there anything you really want to clarify with that?
I do. I do. And this is something that was a light bulb moment for me when I realized that I've been in a manifestation world for a very, very long time. We're talking decades. And, you hear your mentors, gurus, like anyone teaching, you hear the term inspired action, or you hear the term aligned action, right? And we know that that's part of manifestation, because we do have to take action, right? You get an inspiration, you get an idea, you're like, this feels so good. I want to do this. So then you get an inspiration to do something about it. And you're like, okay, cool. I just birthed a book over a weekend. Awesome, right? So you're like, I took inspired action. I did it. I did the thing. I wrote the book. And then you're like, okay, what else, right? And I found myself at some point as I was going through this journey that I would question and kind of get stuck on inspired action, because there would be steps I would need to take that didn't feel so inspired, right? So, like, I give the example of the book. You wrote the book, you gave birth to it, you were all excited, but now you have to contact an editor, or you have to contact a publisher, and then you might get rejected, or you might need to create a website, and you're like, how the fuck do I do that? I don't know anything about websites. And you may get discouraged, and you may think like, you know what? This doesn't feel good. It's not aligned to that warm and fuzzy feeling I was feeling when I wrote the book. So this must not be it. And then you drop it. And that is not the case. The case is that there is such a thing as inspired action and aligned action. And inspired action, yes, is the fuzzy and fun and inspired, and you're floating and you're just shit's coming out of you left and right, right? But the aligned action is the action that you are going to be taking post the inspired action. And to me, like, when I broke that down for myself, um, it was that moment of almost relief, almost permission to, like, you know what? It's okay that I may be feeling a little unsure about these next steps, or they may not be feeling good, but that doesn't mean that it's not part of my process to arrive at the outcome that I'm desiring. And I think that's very important, because it's not talked about. I think those two get so tossed out there, like, just take inspired action, take aligned action. Everybody knows what that is. Like, and I think clarity around that needs to be more widely known.
That's really helpful. And it reminds me of like the common goal that everyone has. Okay, this is a generalization, but people want to be healthy and fit to some degree.
Yes.
So that means you have to exercise if you want that dream body. That's
Yeah.
uncomfortable. That's not fun. But is it going to help you? Is it aligned? Yeah. So you're right. There's the warm and fuzzy, oh, this feels so good action. And that's what I feel when I create content. Because I made
Yeah.
a promise to myself when I started my business that I was not going to burn myself out as quickly. So I would be very mindful of when I'm producing content, when I'm, you know, having even like a bunch of sessions, right? It's not
Mm-hmm.
about the money and it's not about showing these metrics in those way. It's how I feel in my business and making an impact for those, even if it's just one person. So I don't know. Anyway, I'm saying this because like the inspired action of like, oh, I feel called to make this thing like your book, right?
Yeah.
And these hard parts, these uncomfortable. So I love that we're trying to get to the root here of like, you can still be uncomfortable and that still means it's aligned. It doesn't mean like, oh, this is yucky. No, no, no. And then you're parting yourself farther away from that manifestation. So I really
Exactly.
I like that you defined that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it made things a lot easier for me once I did that. It was easier to jump through the fire because a lot of times part of manifestation is taking a leap and believing that the net will appear. That's almost every time, right? Especially when they're the bigger ones, they're the more scary pieces, right? Because it's easy to manifest a shirt or a parking spot.
Yeah, exactly. When it's those really big things. So that leads into my next question is what advice do you have or what would you say of like how can we manifest our dream life? Because the clients that I work with and what I really advertise and want to help people coach, I coach people through is their big dreams. And people dream big, which is awesome and beautiful, right? Whether that's I'm going to be a rock star, I'm going to move across the world or whatever, like what could we say in those big, big ones of taking the leap? How can we manifest that?
Well, I think it's I think it really depends, right? For me, I'm a systemic person. I am a routine kind of person. I like to check off my my items on my list. So for me, there will always be some kind of a system, whatever it is that I'm doing. So I already mentioned earlier when we were talking about the fact that I have a system, right? So um having clarity around that, having clarity around your outcome, around your manifestation, but that's just like a tiny part of it, right? I think the bigger piece is when we are trying or attempting to manifest these huge goals or we have these huge visions, it really um starts to become more of a journey of uncovering really what is coming up as you're creating these intentions, as you're creating this vision, because manifestation is really about alignment. It's really about um your energetic vibration. There's a lot of pieces that go into manifestation. I teach the fundamental core formula because that's the most important piece. But then there's a lot of different layers in this cake. So like to go back, sorry, I went on a tangent, to go back to your question of how can someone at least start to manifest this big dream? For me, it really goes back to um really having clarity, really understanding why you want that dream, what is it doing for you, and is it really truly in alignment with you? Because as I work with a lot of women, and as I work through these concepts with them, what I really find with majority is people think they know what they want, But then when it comes down to like really defining what that is, they have such a hard time to put that down on paper, to to give it meaning, to give it detail. So like that would be the first step for me. If you're thinking you have this big dream and you want to manifest, a house, a car, a family, what does that really mean to you? Like sit down and think about the details of that. What is the value of that? What is that bringing to you? Because if you're not connected to it, then obviously it's probably not going to happen for you. There needs to be a connection. So that would be the number one thing I would say.
So it sounds like the self-reflection piece is huge and getting to the root of your why.
Yeah,
Because if we don't know our why, what are we doing? We're kind of just like walking around aimlessly, right?
right.
Well, and then how does that relate then to, because in order to live your dream life, you're gonna have to probably be someone you've never been before because you've never had it before.
Yep.
So how does manifesting, knowing your why, really getting clear, making sure it's aligned with your values? Okay, cool. We did all that, but like that ain't me though. I'm not that person. So what would you say to that leap? Because it's a different kind of character.
It is. So identity is actually defining your identity is step two of my formula because I actually think it's the most important piece of manifestation. And you're absolutely right. Like if your dream, whatever it is, if your current identity was meant to have it, you already have it, right? So your identity, I talk about self-concept a lot. And self-concept is really this is something Neville Goddard talks about. Self-concept is really the idea that the world is you pushed out. The world is your mirror. So, not only paying attention to identity, meaning who do I need to become in order to align with my desire? Because if I want to be a millionaire, I want to own a business and, I want to have homes all over the country or whatever, right? Um, then obviously I have to step into that identity. I have to step into the CEO, Margaret. I have to step into her with confidence and knowing and really lead from that perspective in order to make the decisions that I will need to make the jumps, take the messy action, right? To jump through the fire, through the fear. So that's the important piece. But where I like to bring in self concept is feedback. So if you look at your world and what is being mirrored to you, for example, let's say you're into the dating scene, you're dating and you're constantly getting ghosted, left hanging, left unread, right? I like to flip this and look at it from a perspective of, okay, what is being communicated to me through the action of others? And they're leaving me unread. They are abandoning me, so to speak, as well, right? You start to look at that. Where am I abandoning myself? Where am I leaving myself unread? Oh, wait, I said I was going to go to the gym yesterday, but I didn't. Oh, shit. I said I was going to go to bed earlier, but I didn't. I said I wasn't going to have those chips, but I ate the whole fucking bag, right? So you start to look at these tiny little minute insignificant moments in your life and you're like, "Oh fuck.
I have to
I'm
stop. Hold on. I'm like, if you're listening, you can't see my facials right now, but like, she hit me with, where are you ghosting yourself? To the heart, Margaret. Way to mic drop that shit. Way to call me out. Okay. That's really profound. Where are we ghosting ourselves? Where are we actually? I'm just, what's yelling in my brain is accountability.
yeah. Yeah.
taking responsibility for yourself. And you're right, like life is a mirror, period, point blank. But oof, you're really getting to me right now. I'm feeling a lot of feels in a good way.
In a
It's
good
good.
way.
It's a great reflection though. Where else are you abandoning yourself? Right, like, oh, I just had these chips, but I want this dream body. I'm not saying you can't have chips. 80/20
Right.
diet people, but it goes back to intention. It goes back to your why. It goes
Back to your identity.
exactly. So, okay, continue.
Yeah. So yes, trust me, I understand. That was me too. When it like when I first started to study this, I was like, oh dang, this is all on me. Like, and then it became this tool where like I wouldn't let ego, step in. I mean, trust me, I'm human. Ego still comes out to play, but like I would just have moments of reflection and use it as a tool because it's very important to look at the world as your feedback. Because once you love yourself to the fucking fullest, the world has no other choice but to reflect such to you. And what does that mean? Whether it's men, showing up left and right, whether it's your friends loving in you, your family, you're going to the store, you're getting freebies, you're getting this, right? Like the world is going to reflect that to you, but only because you don't give a fucking shit, because you love yourself and you are there showing up with confidence saying, hello, I'm here. So that's a combination of identity and self concept.
Yeah, that's beautiful. You said, sorry, say it one more time. The world is your feedback or manifestation is feedback? Like what
So
is
self-concept is the world is you turned out. So the world is your mirror, basically. The
okay.
world is your mirror.
Okay.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
Uh, we don't want to hear that.
No, no.
But it's so good though, because I do have bitter, mm, I do get sassy with victim mindset,
Mm,
which we all get to a degree. I'm
yeah.
not perfect, but especially when I hear it from like family and friends,
Yep.
I'm like, just get your shit together. But that's Coach Page coming out, you
Yes.
know? So I guess I'll say this from my counseling background and coaching, like I can just hear it quickly. I can see red flags, I can see patterns very fast. So I get like, whoo, wait, there's a opportunity for growth here. So I'm very easily able to call that out. Now, when it's myself, right, when I'm having the
Oh,
chips,
of course.
uh, when I and you know where I thought you were gonna go, Margaret? I really thought, like, with this dating thing and like being ghosted, you know what I thought you were gonna say? I thought you were gonna say, because what I say is, oh, like rejection is protection. They weren't meant for you. It's
Rejection is
fine.
redirection.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I was like, oh yeah, well, screw that guy. Like he ghosted me. That's fine. You weren't the one, which may also still be true, but there's also like, where was my part?
Yeah.
What part did I play in this role?
Yeah. What's
So,
the bigger picture, right?
mhm. Beautiful. Well, okay. We're talking, so we got self-concept. The world is our mirror. And, this is all some really good, juicy stuff. I'm curious, how did your interest begin with manifestation? How did this passion start?
Yeah. So I think I've been quote unquote in the woo-woo world since like I was in elementary school. And in reality, it was my friend and her grandmother and her grandmother's friend. They would come over, analyze our handwriting, and read tarot cards as we were like, fifth graders, sixth graders. So of course it was like, cool, like what is this? And then like fast forward several years later when I was maybe, I don't know, 24 years old or something like that, that same friend, she's one of my best friends, gifted me a book. And at the time, the book was called Ask and It Is Given. I think her name is Grabhorn, I think, or something like that. But it was all about manifestation. It was all about intentional creation, energetic alignment. Um, and then that started my journey of digging in, which then obviously I landed on Abraham Hicks, which Abraham has been a huge part of my journey. I mean, if you don't know who Abraham Hicks is, YouTube gazillions of videos all the time. They're everywhere. But that's really how I started, and it just kind of went on from there, throughout the years. I tried all sorts of different things, but really that was the spark. But the funny story is, maybe not so funny for Abraham or the Hicks family, that Lynn Grabhorn, as I said, her name was, I think, the author of that book, plagiarized Abraham's information, basically, and used it in her book. So it was
Ew.
like, it was ill. So, but it was like, well, no wonder it resonated, because it was Abraham's content. So it's kind of like an introduction to Abraham without being, knowing that I was introduced, and then really going to the real thing. I didn't know that at the time. I learned that years later, because I think they like even had legal proceedings for it. I know.
Abraham's just getting in there.
Yeah, Abraham's like, what?
Dang. Oh
But
my
yeah, that's
gosh.
really how I started. And, that led to like, I'm an individual that really likes evidence at times too. Like I have a little bit of a science mind as well. And this kind of led me into like the physics piece, the quantum physics or quantum mechanics. And I started to get into that. I'm actually about to take a class with a doctor that I'm so excited about. Like, so cool. But really like understanding quantum leaping as well. And just like, you know, um our universe, and understanding the biological pieces of like, the atoms and protons and like subatomic particles, and understanding that like that's all energy, that's all vibrating. So that's really something that I'm still pursuing. Uh, Science was never my favorite thing in school, you know. So of course now I'm like, yes, it's so cool. So I'm digging even more and more into it, but there's a lot of things with the brain, obviously the science of the brain, the power of the brain, like it all coexists together in this manifestation world. And it's really good to, in my opinion, to understand and at least know that these pieces are available to us, and will help you create.
I love that. I'm with you too. Like there's a balance of woo woo and science.
Yeah.
And manifestation's great for that because it tailors to every single audience. You can go any direction with it and you can find something that feels aligned with you of how you want to utilize it. And there's so many techniques, there's so many things you can literally do. And then you can also just surrender too. So, kind of with thinking about maybe the people that are listening that are like, I've done all the things, I've manifested for years, like they really, really want XYZ. What would you say to them of like why we're not getting what we want yet, even though we're doing all the right things?
Well, the simple answer is it may not be time.
Mm,
It just may not be time yet. It's the whole enter the coordinates in the GPS and let Siri direct you. So if you're going to turn left, you're supposed to go right. She's going to redirect you anyway. But if it's not your time to get to the destination, then it's not your time. So kind of sitting with that a little bit, like
right. That's the
trusting
answer we are
fate.
annoyed with, right? But
Yes.
top tier manifestation, you don't know the when and you
Yes.
don't know the how.
You don't. It's none of
You
your
can
business.
guess, but you don't
Right.
know.
Right. You can guess um by having those intuitive hits as you're going from breadcrumb to breadcrumb to breadcrumb, right? For sure, you can start to like see it and feel it.
Hmm.
But yeah, but generally speaking, it's none of your business. But another answer to that is I would say, first of all, evaluating like how hard are you trying to get this manifestation? Because if you're working too hard, then guess what? You're in lack. That is resistance. That is lack mentality. That is slaving away. Listen, there are two ways to manifest. You could look at it that way, right? Like you could grind, you could fucking just be working for hours and you're going to get your $1,000,000. Or you could sit back and intuitively, with strategy, create whatever it is that you're supposed to create that will lead you to that piece. And it may come to you in half the time without you doing anything, right? Like I have evidence of both, but one is easier versus the other. But to say, if you're really, really slaving away or you've been working so hard, trying so hard, stop. Like that's resistance. That is creating more resistance, because what it's saying really is, I don't trust. It's like the Amazon story. I don't know if you've ever heard it. I forget what I heard it. I think Melanie and Lear, but it's the whole process of you placing an order with Amazon, right? You placed it, you're like, cool. Amazon told me it's going to be here like in 2 days. Awesome, right? Woo, woo, great. And you're just waiting and you're fine with it. You trust, you go on about your life. You're not even thinking, are my shoes going to come in? But then there's this other version of you that's like tracking down where the package is going to be. You drive to Kentucky, you track Joe down in his truck, and you're like, hey, Joe, pounding, hey, Joe, I'm here for my shoes. You got my shoes. I'm just going to grab them because, I don't know. Things happen. The weather happens. They might not get there in 2 days. So I'm just going to take them. You go about your day. I got it. I got it. It's all good. That's not detaching.
No, absolutely not. Tell us more about detachment. It sounds really lovely, but for my goal-getting, ambitious, perfectionist people, that may be a little challenging. So tell us more about letting go and surrendering, which is the easier, more
Yeah.
lovely way. But
Yeah.
yeah, tell us a little bit more about detachment.
First of all, I'm a recovering perfectionist.
Same.
So 100%. I get it. I get it. Um, well, detaching, I will be honest, is not an easy thing to do. And what I have, well, it depends what it is, right? It depends how emotionally attached you are to the thing. I mean, okay, me manifesting my cat was easy to detach versus me manifesting my husband, very different things. Um, but I would say is, without saying, trust in the universe, trust in God and all that, blah, blah, blah. I would say finding tools that will help to support your nervous system as you are being triggered. Because what's really happening when we have said desire or manifestation and we start to feel anxiety about it because it hasn't happened and our body, our nervous system is reacting, all that's really telling us is that we need to calm down and come back to a parasympathetic system, right? State, I should say. So I would say is finding tools that work for you that help to bring you out of that state, because it's a continual training. Dr. Joe Dispenza, I just was listening to him this morning, and I love the fact when he's talking about your personality is your personal reality, right? Which goes back to our identity as well. But part of your personality is, being emotional, reacting emotionally. But in order to change that, reality, to change that personality, you have to interject on purpose, right? With intent of shifting this behavior. And it's not going to happen the first time. So every time you get triggered, having a tool, and the tools that work for me are things like sleeping tracks. So I use sleeping tracks that target specific topics. Sometimes it may be self-love, sometimes it may be money, sometimes it may be fitness or business, like whatever I'm feeling I want to work on, because when you listen to sleeping tracks, you're subliminally feeding your brains, your subconscious, right? You're reprogramming your subconscious, which is really your operating system. That's really our blueprint, is on a subconscious level, and we operate on that system without knowing we're operating on it many times. Um, so because it's a slower process, like I'll dedicate like a 30-day window to listening to those tracks. But then I also utilize something like a rampage. I call it tangent. Abraham calls it rampage of appreciation. Rampage seems very like violent to me, so I rename it to tangent, because I go off on tangents all the time. So, but it's the same thing. And the idea there is that you are um, saying things associated with the topic, right? So, like, money always has my back. I love money, money loves me. Oh, why am I so lucky? Like, hell yeah, I'm so lucky. It's just like, it's just this rampage of building on top of one thing, on top of another, that helps you raise your vibration. That's really what that purpose is. And one of my favorite things for nervous system regulation is EFT tapping. So I find that that is quick. Breath work is great too, because you could do that anywhere. But EFT tapping just for me feels better. And I think part of it is because, like, consciously you're doing this tapping, and subconsciously you're hearing and you're being fed this other narrative. Um, and your nervous system, like, afterwards, at least for me, is like, okay, I feel a lot better. So those, there are many different tools, but that's really what I would say when we're detaching and working on detachment, especially when it's something that is more emotional, that we're more connected to, really having once again, a system in place, and understanding that, okay, this is going to take a little bit of time. I'm going to intentionally now work on switching this piece of myself, because you're really changing part of your identity, part of your operating system. And that's a big deal.
So while you gave amazing examples of how to detach and what's worked for you, I did hear as well that we're in, right, when we're trying, there's resistance, there's lack,
Yeah.
and that means we are triggered. We are in some kind of hyper state
Hmm.
where we need to get back down to normal. And so in order to get back there, it sounds like there's some coping skills. And I do have an episode actually on EFT tapping if you guys want to go back to I think it's season 4. I have an EFT expert, and she goes over that. So that's a great tool as well. Breath work. It does sound like we need to get back into a grounded state. I have used sleep tracks. I didn't know it was a rampage or tantrum. I didn't know that's what it calls, because I do kind of have this like excessive, I'm abundant, blah, 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 blah. Like,
Yeah.
to just kind of like switch it up and redirect. It does just sound like in order to detach, like we need to like get calm, get centered. For me, it helps to get connected with my higher power like that.
Hmm. Sure.
Um, and it also reminded me, we're gonna get into another episode about core transformation and kind of like subconscious beliefs. So kind of getting to
Hmm.
a core state of, I am okay, I am loved, like very basic, so that subconscious can chill the fuck out.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, it can be tricky, but if we have systems, if we have tools, it'll be that much easier to detach and know that it's a process.
Yeah.
It's
Be-
yeah.
because it does take evidence, right? Like, we as human beings, our mind needs evidence that, like, okay, I can detach and trust, and it's going to work out. Like, that's part of it too. Um, but it's much harder to rely on others' evidence versus your own. And if you don't have that evidence, then you have to create it. But in order to create it, then you have to go through the process. So it's a process, and it's part of this journey. you
Mhm.
know? It's part of this journey. That's why you're on it.
Yes. Manifestation is a journey. Life is a journey. I do want to touch on, you mentioned, oh, when I manifested my cat versus manifested my husband.
Oh,
Could you talk about how you manifested your cat? I think that would be a great story.
yeah. So, um, my cat story is really an illustration of what it means to detach, what it means to clearly define your manifestation or your desired outcome. So our family decided that we were going to get a cat, my daughter, my son, and I. And I knew we wanted a tabby cat. So drew the line on the sand, tabby cat, we're getting a cat. Next steps were go shopping, get the food, get the stuff, get the bed, get the litter box, all of that stuff, all of that, right? Then look at adoption centers and just kind of fill out application. This was during COVID, so we weren't able to like physically go anywhere. Um, so applications were filled out, a month passed, nothing. I would check here and there. But point being is that was taking the inspired action, that was taking the aligned action. Like I said, that was defining that desired outcome. But because this was, and I don't want to say just a cat, but I've had cats in the past. So there was no doubt in my mind that a cat wasn't going to come. And I was able to detach. Like I went on about my day, I'd check in every so often and be like, cool. And I didn't think about it. And then a few months into this process, I received a message from one of my friends, and she was like, hey, are you in this Facebook group? There's someone that has kittens. I'm like, oh, let me check it out. So of course I check it out and ask if the kittens are available, and the woman's like, oh yeah, totally. And so she's like, well, which one are you interested in? Yada yada yada. Long story short, I'm like, okay, cool, we're gonna get that cat. So then I asked, like, where are you located? And she's like, oh, Cincinnati, Ohio, or something. She was in Ohio. She was like 6 hours away. And I was like, oh, no problem. I'm like, what else do we have to do? Like, we'll go for a road trip. Like, no big deal. We're gonna go pick up the cat. Like, fine. Okay, cool. And then she's like, well, where are you located? And I'm like, oh, like in the Chicagoland area near O'Hare. And she's like, well, where? And I'm like, oh, Park Ridge. She's like, I'm going to be in Jefferson Park on Friday. This was Wednesday when I was talking to her. On Friday, I'm just going to bring him to you. It's 10 minutes away from my house where she was going to be. So literally, the cat was literally dropped off in a box in front of my doorstep, free of charge. Like I did nothing but take inspired action, define the desire, and detach. Right?
I love those stories when things fall in your lap. In the moment, you're like, oh, this was so easy, but you prepped. You did the
Yes.
work. You did a lot
Yes.
of work. You also, when in terms of like the trust, you did have, I mean, you didn't explicitly say this, but I'm implying you were already in an abundant mindset.
Oh,
There's
100%.
so many cats out there. And sure, like cats is like, that's just like an example. Yes, there's a bunch of cats, but that's really helpful when we're in like a lack of money mindset, right?
Yeah.
Is like still remembering that there is a lot of money out there, even though we can't touch
Yes.
it, taste it, smell
Evidence.
it. So you did a lot of prep work. And also, do you have a term? I've been, I've been really dying to know, like, what is this term that I don't know if it's called something specific. I feel like when mothers are setting up the nursery, I think that's called nesting.
Nesting.
But is there a term for manifestation where I am acting as if, but I am preparing the material for the thing to come? Like, is there a term for that?
There may be.
Okay.
I don't have a term for that.
But I just call it like nesting because, for
Yeah.
example, when I backpacked, I didn't buy the ticket yet, but I just had the idea I'm going to backpack to Europe. I bought all the other things like my backpack,
Yeah.
my shoes. I cleared out space because I knew I was going to move. Like, so it's like I was giving the universe clues. this is happening. So I just didn't know if there was like an official term like nesting of where you're creating that environment.
Yeah, for me, I mean, that's all part of taking action.
Totally.
Yeah.
Cool. I love that. I love that there was no effort, like, or it was just like, here's the cat, come to
Yep.
me. Beautiful story. I
Yeah,
love
I
that.
love it. I love it because I feel like it's relatable, but also like you can vividly see the steps. And
Hmm.
obviously I was at a point in time where I could like literally be like, oh, this is what's happening. This is what's happening. So it's also cool
Hmm.
to observe as you're observing this like miracle taking place.
And a big takeaway too, I think, with that story is remembering, I think, in order for anyone to practice, accept, play with manifestation is open mindedness to how things are going to come. Because you even said, oh, yeah, I'll drive 6 hours. Like you already committed
Yeah.
pretty, and you were pretty chill about it too. You weren't like begrudgingly like, I'll drive 6 hours. You're like, no, like, okay, sure, if that's what I'm supposed to do, I'll do it. But spirit had another plan,
Yeah.
which was a lot more easy. So I always say to like people that want to manifest their dream car and those really like rigid budget, Excel spreadsheet people, it's like, okay, well, in 6 months, if I say this, also be open that you could win the lottery tomorrow,
Yes.
but you do need to buy a ticket.
Yes.
So there's that, but be open to how things will come into fruition. It doesn't, going back to let go of the how, let go of the when, but be clear, take inspired action, even if it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And to wrap up too, I have a couple more questions for you before we end, but just to kind of give the audience maybe some like very quick steps, since you said, what are maybe like your top secrets for why we're not getting what we want? Like, is there any kind of go-to? I mean, this could also just wrap up what we've been talking about, but like maybe just some top secrets to speed
Yeah.
this up.
Yeah, so I would say, as I mentioned earlier, there is this core formula. There are these fundamentals that I rely on, which is identifying your desired outcome, defining your identity, and then taking inspired and aligned action. But that's just a part of it. So the things that I rely on when it comes to manifestation, aside from that, energy, right? Like the importance of feeling good, of vibing high. Like we hear this all the time. We hear it all the time, but it's true. It is absolutely true. We are energetic beings. We are vibrating. We have a frequency, and we're essentially walking antennas that are communicating with everything outside of us. So for me, one of the secrets is making sure you're maintaining a vibrating state, a frequency that is high, because that's what's going to match your manifestation. So, how do I do that? So, this is going to differ for everyone, right? But once again, having some things to rely on so that you could lift yourself back up. For me, it's important to take care of my body. For me, it's important, whether it's a walk, whether I'm working out, whether I'm dancing, whether I'm on trampoline, like to move my body, because not only is that going to lift you and make you feel good about yourself, but it's also going to give you confidence, which confidence is also going to lift you even higher, right? So like the energetic piece is very, very important. To me in my world. The other piece I would say is, and we already talked about it, but really understanding the importance of identity and self-concept. Like really being able to reflect in those moments when you're being hit and your ego's like, fuck that, fuck this. I don't want to take responsibility for anything. La 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 la. No. Learn how to just calm the F down and tell ego, go sit out. Sit this one out, Nancy. Sorry, Nancy. Um, because I got it. And reflecting, because that reflection is not only going to keep your vibe up higher, because you're not going to spin out of control like a crazy person, but it's also going to give you insight and information. And remember, it's just data. It's just data. So that, and The other one is, and actually, hold on. For identity, I forgot to mention one of the tools that I like to use that is quick and fun is the speak it into existence method or the telephone method, however you choose to call it. But that's literally when you're driving, when you're walking, talking to yourself, but pretending like you're talking to your best friend or your whoever, and really having a dialogue based on whatever it is that you're manifesting. So like really hyping yourself up, really just sharing like, "Hey girl, what's up? How is this? Oh my God, you will not believe who called me today. You will not believe," right? Like if you're, trying to manifest your SP or something like that. And just kind of talking about that because that really starts to get you into that dynamic and into that frequency. So I just wanted to mention that before I go to the next one because this one is something that I feel is missed too in our industry, and it's gratitude. I think I think a lot of times people make gratitude as just like this to do thing. Like, I'm just going to write my 5 gratefuls today, and I'm grateful for my notebook and my pencil and my chair and this window and this telephone. And you're like, okay, cool. I did my gratitude practice. And that's not what it is about. Gratitude is a state of being. And gratitude is really feeling. It's about feelings. So what I've learned, and this is a tool I'll give you guys or girls or everyone, is I started to lean on events and memories from the past that were really touching to me. So that let's say, you're not every day waking up and you're like, "Oh, I'm so grateful." And you're like in this like gratitude state. Sometimes we need to get there. So what I learned is I started to lean on these memories or moments or experiences that happened in the past in order to get me to this state of gratitude. And I'll give you an example. I like to give this example. When my ex-husband and I started dating years ago, we went to a party at a sister's house, and I've known him for a very long since he was in kindergarten. Like I've known his family forever. So it wasn't like I was meeting the family for the first time and I had to like be worried and nervous. I knew everyone. But what he did is he made me a plate of food without me asking him to do so. And he brought it to me and he walked me to the table, pulled out the chair for me, and was like, "Hey, babe, here, why don't you eat? Like you haven't eaten today. Like, here, I got you some food." And that small gesture of someone doing this for me, because no one had really ever done that for me aside from my mother, maybe my sister. I have an older sister. But that gesture was so touching to me. Like it's one of those human expressions that is small and mighty. So I have that moment when I want to get into the state of gratitude and appreciation where I'll rely on that moment. I'll recall that memory and I'll just kind of absorb it, take it in. And many times I'm like there in tears because I'm so grateful that this man did this for me. So I would say those are the 3 things: energy, identity, self-concept, and gratitude.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing so much of that wisdom. That's amazing. It's very practical too. And
Mhm.
you went through each of them in pretty great detail, right? So someone could just kind of like just hone in on one for a while
Yep.
and, and see how that feels. But all very important, all very bleeding into each other too. So
Yeah.
is there a specific maybe thing that someone can work on after they listen to this podcast? Maybe something in the show notes you want to include, some little gift or something like that for them.
Yes. So I have all of the above.
Okay, great.
So the one thing I want to challenge everyone that is listening to work on is to make room for your desire. And what that really means is looking at the vacuum law of prosperity, which is simply making room for the thing that you want to attract, right? You have to make room for it. So my challenge to everyone is go clear out some of your fucking shit. Go clean your purse. Go clean your wallet, your car, your junk drawer, whatever it is. I won't say your closet because that's like you got to dedicate time for that. I get that, but that would be good too. But that would be my homework for you. Go clean some of these things out. Make room because I call those energy leaks. That's something one of my mentors called as well, but it's an energy leak. Just like those bills that you're supposed to pay, not that you can't pay them, but you're like, oh, I haven't gotten to them. I'm guilty of this too. I'm human. Those are energy leaks. And we want to kind of, you know, cover our bases and take care and make sure our side of the street is clean. So go clear some shit out.
I
And
love
that,
that. I love that because I'm a super big minimalist and like decluttering is literally my favorite thing. It's like how I get high. I'm
nah,
like, it's a vibe. I love decluttering. So you're
yeah,
speaking my language.
I
Um,
love it.
yeah. Anything else that
Yes,
you want to include?
I do. I do. So I have three things I'd love to give to your audience. One of them is a mini course on how to improve your relationship with money called Ignite Your Wealth. So we'll link that in the show notes. The other one is called Ignite Your Life. It's a masterclass that focuses on manifestation. So that will be available. But I would like to gift your audience a discount code for my manifestation class or program, I should say. It's called Recalibrate, and I address a lot of what we talked about here in that program and a lot more. There's a lot of tools and techniques that we share in that program. So the code will be Page Podcast 25. You will get a 25% discount, which is amazing, but you will not be disappointed. It's a great program and I really enjoyed creating it. And like I said, I think it's super important for individuals out there to understand the fundamentals and the basis to build that core foundation so that you can then add these additional layers and pieces into your manifestation process so that you could create the life you desire.
Yay. Thank you so much. Thank you for the code, the wisdom. I'm super excited for those courses. That's going to be amazing. And what is a good way for people to contact you if they have more questions or want to get a hold of you?
So I think the best way will be my TikTok. So that is the Margaret Kujawa. We will link that in the show notes, but you could also go to margaretkujawa.com and find me there.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for the show. I learned a lot. And
Yay.
yeah, there's definitely a lot of takeaways that I know will make an impact. Did you have fun?
Oh my God, totally.
Okay,
Thank you for
good.
having me. It was so much fun. I love talking about this stuff and you do too. So, like, it's just so fun to bounce back and forth. I loved it. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. You just speak so naturally. And one of my passions is watching other people in their passions. So I loved how you just like went for it and you just gave such great practical takeaways. Like I'm all about the practical. I don't want to listen to a podcast and be like, what just happened?
Yeah.
So we have a lot of golden nuggets here. And I'm also going to put in the show notes too. Like I'm keeping myself accountable, but I'm going to put in the show notes maybe just some like timeline stamps or whatever of like, hey, here are some key things. Go straight to this one. So I'll do a couple of those
Okay.
for each episode as well.
Sounds
Thank you
good.
so much, Margaret. Really, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
yeah. Thank you for my listeners out there. If this episode truly resonated with you, make sure to share it on your socials and tag Margaret and I as well so we can say hello. And remember, every single day provides a lesson. Go out there, dream big, and I'll catch you next week. Take care.